Today we are welcoming the fact that the International Security Assistance Force, ISAF, has determined, in conjunction with Afghan authorities and with Australia, that the multinational base at Tarin Kot will close at the end of this year, will close at the end of 2013. The effect of that closure will be that Australia will no longer have a permanent presence in Oruzgan province, and the majority of Australian Defence Force personnel will return from Afghanistan to Australia. Whilst there will be some movement in the numbers, and while we are redeploying and repatriating both personnel and equipment, the numbers will go up and down. We expect that by the end of the year we will see at least 1,000 Australian personnel return home. This is consistent with transition in Oruzgan and in Afghanistan. You'll recall that at both the Lisbon and Chicago summits, the international community agreed that we would transition out of Afghanistan by the end of 2014. In Oruzgan's case, we announced at the beginning of this year that we were confident that transition would occur by the end of this year. And in November of last year, General Hurley and I commenced discussions with then Commander of ISAF, John Allen, about the closure of the base at Tarin Kot. And in December last year and January of this year, we formally exchanged correspondence to that effect, and we're now in a position to join with ISAF to make this announcement today. The history of Tarin Kot is that we've had a presence in Tarin Kot, a permanent presence in Tarin Kot since 2005. That was through the establishment of Camp Russell. The Dutch then built Camp Holland, and as a consequence of those two facilities, they were renamed the multinational base Tarin Kot. And the decision announced today, in conjunction with ISAF, will see the closure of that facility so far as Australia and ISAF is concerned at the end of this year. Camp Russell is where Australia's Special Forces currently operate from, and Camp Holland is a much larger area where the remainder of our personnel are based, both military and civilian. It's proposed, and the planning is underway, that all of Camp Russell will be transferred to Afghan authorities and the Afghan National Army, and a portion of Camp Holland will be transferred to Afghan authorities and the Afghan National Army. I'll ask General Hurley in a moment to go through some of the practical details and some of the practical effect of that, and to also make some remarks about how the Australian Defence Force will be positioned in Afghanistan from the end of 2013 on. You would of course be aware of my general remarks and those of the Prime Minister and those of General Hurley in the past, that after transition at the end of December 2014, we remain ready, willing and able to engage in training, particularly officer training, and we've also indicated that we would hold out the prospect of a Special Forces contribution under an appropriate mandate, either for counter-terrorism activity or for training. In terms of numbers, you will of course recall that General Hurley and the Prime Minister and I have always been very wary about defining the drawdown of our troops in advance of it actually occurring. Currently, rule of thumb, we have about 1,650 personnel in Afghanistan. That's above the average of 1,550 because we have in Afghanistan the presence of over 150 personnel whose task is to commence the redeployment, the repatriation and the remediation. About 1,300 of those are in Oruzgan and the remainder in Kandahar and Kabul. And so when the closure of multinational base Oruzgan, Tarin Kot occurs in Oruzgan, that will see an effective drawdown and return to Australia of some 1,000 troops. We'll be able to be more precise and specific about that over the next period, because what we'll be doing in the post-2014 environment, and as a consequence what we'll be doing in 2014, is subject to decisions to be made between the Afghan government and ISAF, between the Afghan government and NATO, and between the Afghan government and the United States. Can I also just indicate, and you've received a statement to this effect, that today we're also announcing the award of the first Army Battle Honour since the end of the Vietnam War. A battle honour will be awarded for the operation conducted in Shah Wali Kot in May and June of 2010. This was the operation which saw Ben Roberts-Smith awarded his Victoria Cross. But today we're announcing for the first time for Army since the end of the Vietnam War a battle honour for that operation. And that is specifically an honour for the Special Air Services Regiment and 2nd Commandos. And again, I'll ask General Hurley to make some remarks about that. As I say, I'll ask David to make some remarks about those two issues, and then we're happy to respond to your questions. David?
Thank you, Minister. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In relation to the first issue in terms of the closure and the transfer of the base at Tarin Kot, you'll be aware in recent times, by about November last year, we'd handed over or ceased responsibility for mentoring and training of the 4 infantry Kandaks, closed down the forward operating bases, and essentially moved the centre of our operations inside the base. From there, we've been continuing this year to conduct the advisory role with the brigade headquarters, 4th Brigade headquarters, training and assisting the 2 non-infantry Kandaks or battalions, the combat support and the service support battalions, and also assisting with the Operational Coordination Centre at the government level in Aruzgan. Special Operations Task Forces continue this operation. So during the rest of this year, a number of things will be occurring in parallel. We'll continue those tasks and towards the latter part of the year, and then gradually we'll step down in the latter part of the year, cease those tasks and send those people home. Other than the SOTG, I'll come back to that in a moment. In the meantime, in parallel to that, we'll be extracting our equipment as it becomes unnecessary to hold it there any further, and we'll begin the collapsing of the camp, those areas of the camps which we are not transferring to Afghan units or bases. So, for example, with the National Training Mission Afghanistan is moving another Kandak into Tarin Kot. They will take over some of the facilities, so we don't have to pull those down, just clean them up and hand them over. For the Afghan National Officer Academy in Kabul, we will be sending quite a number of our portable container living accommodation buildings and so forth up to Kabul for those use. So you'll see that sort of distribution going on. And then we'll have to collapse all the life support utilities in the camp and clean those up and remediate those to the appropriate standards. And on top of that, obviously, moving back equipment by both container over the road through Pakistan or by air back to Australia. As we look to 2014, we will continue with the mentoring, tasking, the advisory and training mission we have with the headquarters of the 205 Corps in Kandahar. So that continues this year and next year. Later this year, we'll commence with the United Kingdom the role of training and education in the Officer Academy, and that will run through 2014. We'll continue with our embedded staff. As the Minister has indicated, still the decision to be made about continued employment of the Special Forces element in Afghanistan, pending the final determination of the nature of the mission and the troops that will be required in the mission post 2014. So those decisions lie ahead of us. They're not all in our hands. Obviously, we'll be involved in discussions with the governments and institutions that we're making those decisions, but we need to wait a bit further until we can go firm on that. But as the government has said, under the appropriate mandate, we are prepared to make a Special Forces contribution, either for training or for counter-terrorism purposes.